There was a time when America hung out the Help Wanted sign and immigrants were called on to help build a nation. Fast forward to today, some feel the welcome mat has been unfairly rolled up. Others argue coming to America is not an answer to another country's economic problems. If you want in, you have to get permission first. At the heart are basically two issues. One, national security.
We have solid intelligence telling us that the terrorists want to exploit the weaknesses of both borders.
The other issue, the positive and negative impact on our economy, our schools, our healthcare system.
The cost is very significant, about $97 million on cost.
Our criminal justice system.
20 to 23% were non-U.S. citizens. 16% of the sheriff's budget alone was $41 million last year.
And the petition for jobs.
A worker is a worker is a worker.
There are willing employers who are willing to hire willing workers.
Who's to blame? The illegal immigrant when they entered the country? Their government for not offering opportunity at home? Or is it the American government for not enforcing immigration laws? And American employers who offer the incentive to come to place a job? In our audience, they are all on the front lines of immigration reform, but differ widely on how to get there.
And now, an 11 News special presentation, Crossing the Line, Immigration and Houston.
The town of El Paso del Norte lives up to. Translated, it means the pathway to the north. And it is for thousands who come into America legally and those who cross the line illegally. When we came here, we were surprised to find out how easy that could be. Many Americans picture a post-9/11 border to be something more substantial than it really is in most places.
Military guys driving in patrol.
Mounted police.
It has to be like a really strong, sturdy fence that's going to do something.
They should be monitored as they are at the airports.
I see Uncle Sam on the border, going with one hand going like this, and then with the other one, hurry up, get across.
At our first stop, the Rio Grande River is only a few feet wide and shallow. There is no fence, no real physical boundary dividing Mexico and America. But we did see Border Patrol agents stationed a few hundred yards apart.
I was very surprised at the amount of people crossing the border and how easy it was.
Guys like us, they're trying to secure the border for the reasons that concern us, the drugs and the crime and those things that affect our communities.
Most people assume that illegal immigrants are simply sneaking into the country, but they don't have to. Every day, thousands cross this bridge into America with paperwork allowing them to work, shop, or visit for the day. Then they're supposed to go back home. Problem is, many of them don't. Instead, they head straight over to bus stations that will take them all across the country, disappearing into American society within a matter of hours. Early in the morning and late in the evenings, you'll see a lot of people walking the streets with suitcases and food for a long trip. Immigration officials admit they don't know who those buses, and actually checking for IDs on just a hunch, that could be crossing the line. A few miles up the road, the Minutemen took us into New Mexico. Again, we saw the presence of Border Patrol and the National Guard spaced several miles apart. And there are other signs that Congress is feeling the pressure to make changes. This is another effort to keep people from coming into the illegally. You might be asking how? I can simply walk from Mexico into the United States. But the difference here is to keep in particular trucks out that might be smuggling people or illegal drugs.
About this time of day, the illegals will start staging right at the base of that hill there in one of those low areas. And then they'll wait for nightfall, and that's make their trek across this border. And as you can see, they can walk right through here.
The third spot Pat and Rob took us to did have a fence, but it was not impressive. Someone had driven right through it at one time, someone else just cut their way through, and countless others just climb over. We came face to face with a Mexican family on the other side of the fence, and seeing how they live in just a few inches away, we had to ask ourselves, would any fence stop people in such a desperate situation from coming here? Problema trabajo?
Yeah. If we didn't have this safety valve for all the poor people to come across and earn a decent living, the Mexican government would probably been already either overthrown. But you know, as long as you got a safety valve, then the government down in Mexico is never going to change.
I'm against vigilantes in the United States of America. I'm for enforcing law in a rational way. That's why we've got a border patrol.
They were at first called vigilantes. Now they're a group to be reckoned with. They have forced this issue of border security to the forefront of American politics. Congress recently approved funding to build a stronger fence along parts of the border, something the Mexican government does not support. In fact, Mexico has been accused of actually helping people to come here by creating these border-crossing comic books with instructions on how to do it. But the Mexican Consulate General maintains these were meant to save lives.
Let me answer this in a very, very personal manner, all right? I was consul at the border for 2.5 years, and that pamphlet was done with a purpose of alerting people that, to the perils of to the U.S. That was the main and the sole purpose. Now, I grant that the pamphlet shouldn't have been done the way it was, because if you're very selective, you take parts of that pamphlet and you present it as, quote, proof that this is what we're doing. But the categorical answer is that if an individual that read that pamphlet was saved, was alerted and was very prepared, then I would take all the criticism gladly, because for us, I must remind people that the people who died in the desert are Mexicans overwhelmingly. And that was the purpose, and I say this quite emphatically.
The vast majority in all polls want a secure border. So fellas, do it. Go to work, protect us. And if you're too incompetent or too feeble in Congress to be able to do that, maybe we need some different elected officials to handle the job for you.
All right, joining us in the audience is Larry Youngblood. You started with the Minutemen, Civil Defense Corps. You're now with Texas Border Watch, but you're just kind of an everyday average citizen. Prompted you to say, I'm joining this organization?
Very simply, it was seeing my president call these guys vigilantes is what got me there the first time. We're not vigilantes. We're a numerous group of citizens who want to secure the border. We want our police to be able to enforce the law, and we're going to tell politicians when not.
When you first went down, you had heard the stories, but it was different when you actually saw it.
There's all kinds of interesting stories, such as seeing a man and woman dragging their little son or daughter between their hands, running across the field under night vision, seeing pregnant women running across there, falling on their feet and other things. You worry about those kind of things, and finding dead bodies.
And when you say that, seeing dead bodies, people who just couldn't make it across those conditions, I think it points to how desperate some people are to obviously get here. Isais Torres, you have a family with you who are joining us this evening, and of course they don't want to be recognized on their situation. We'll get to that in a couple of minutes, but this is a family who had to leave, or felt like they had to leave because they could not make it back at home.
That's
what
right.
was the situation they were going through?
Well, they 23 years ago, this family found themselves in an economic situation where they had to leave their home and come to the United States. And throughout the last 23 years, they've lived here, have raised their children, and in fact, their oldest son in the military went to Iraq and died for this country in that situation 3 years ago.
And they still cannot get their citizenship.
And they still are not able to get their residency. That's right.
Can I know you have to translate for them. How did they come here? How did they get through?
Pregunta que cómo fue que cruzaste a los Estados Unidos.
Yo pasé por el río.
I came through the river.
Y pues de ahí para allá, pasando el río, vine en un carro.
After I crossed the river, someone brought me in a car.
Y pues al llegar aquí, luego a trabajar en un restaurante, empecé a trabajar.
And just arriving here, I started to work and have been working since.
All right, Rick Altman, we certainly, I think, as Americans are compassionate as to what's happening here. However, America can't take on the world.
A lot of sad stories in the world, a lot of people living in poverty. But the fact is, we have an immigration policy and we have laws that need to be enforced, and they're simply not being enforced. And that's what we're hearing now in the last year and a half, especially with the Minutemen, is that citizens are starting to tell the government to get down and enforce the law, provide a secure border. And that's what's so funny about the whole vigilante claim is this is an interesting bunch of vigilantes. The only actual demand of the government is that the government actually enforce our immigration laws.
One of the things that Larry had said to me earlier was that he was surprised at just how many people were walking across that border. Things have changed a little bit, being that there's been a lot of pressure on the federal government to make some changes. I want to go to T.J. Bonner, who's with the National Border Patrol Council. Job for those folks who are working along that border. Has it really gotten any better, or have we seen kind of a big PR push go on here?
Unfortunately, it's the latter. We have 12,000 agents to cover 8,000 miles of border. At any given time, you have perhaps 25% of that. So that means 1,000 agents to guard 8,000 miles of border. Our agents estimate that we catch 25 to 33% of the people coming across. Now, granted, 98% of those are people just looking for work. It's the 2% that scares the hell out of most of Americans, because those are the criminals, and there are terrorists coming across that border. Just because we haven't captured any of them doesn't mean they haven't come across.
What evidence do you have that there's possibly terrorists coming across that border?
We have solid intelligence telling us that the terrorists want to exploit the weaknesses of both borders. And we also catch a fair number of people from these that we call special interest countries, sponsors of terrorism.
Just the fact that it's open means that anybody can come in.
Absolutely.
All right, when we were in El Paso and New Mexico, one thing that we saw as well was the presence of the National Guard. Has that helped at all?
Not really. They sent about 6,000 National Guard troops down there to free up the Border Patrol to do our job of patrolling. They freed up about 250 agents. About the same number are now guarding the National Guard because they're not allowed to be armed. So it's really a wash. It's a big PR campaign.
I don't know if we actually resolved anything tonight, but I certainly hope that we gave you something to think about, something to talk about. We need to wrap things up right now, but if you would like to join this roundtable, some of our guests will actually be online to answer questions and talk with you about your opinions and possible solutions. Just go to KHOU.com and look for the link titled Crossing the Line. They'll be online from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock immediately following the show. I'm Deborah Duncan. Thanks for joining us this evening. Thank all of you for joining us very much, for shedding some light on this very difficult, complex, and emotional topic. Good night.
These things serve no purpose.
I'm connected on KHOU.com.
Get web info that matters. Get breaking news, local stories updated constantly, and video on demand at KHOU.com. Connecting you to what matters. KHOU.com.